Hello, friends, neighbors. John, your wish neighbor here. Welcome down to the Nook. This is going to be a good one. We're talking about some big Laphroaig. Both bottles up here, 58.6, 58.5, the 10-year-old classic, and this expression, which will actually be the focus of today's conversation, is Laphroaig Elements 1.0. So, Laphroaig Elements is they're trying to experiment but in a different way. Instead of different casking, and that's the most common, different strengths, different ages, they're looking at the process. They're looking at the mash tuns, the wort, and they also changed up their barley a bit. So we're going to focus on this, Laphroaig Elements 1.0. We're going to see, does that affect the taste? And because it's 58.6, an awesome comparison is this Laphroaig 10, a classic, which is 58.5%. They're both ex-bourbon. Of course, they're both Laphroaig. I think this is going to be a really good conversation about what does experimentation at that part of the process yield in the final result. Pour something peated, pour a big Laphroaig if you can, and let's just get into this together. 3, 4. Well, I hope you poured something big and peated for your glass. Let's get into a bit of the details here for Laphroaig Elements 1.0. This is their next experimentation phase. I don't know. It's really cool though, because you can go to their website, you can read about it, you can see the distillery manager Barry kind of walk through the 3 core differences in what this is compared to their regular Laphroaig release. So the core differences are, first, they highlight that this is all Islay barley. It's I think here they do Islay barley, but also a mix of other probably Scottish barley, or who knows, could be Canadian barley. I know we ship a bunch over to Scotland. But then, that's the first thing. This is 100% Islay in every part of it. Then they are changing their mash tuns. That's where you're, mixing up that mash and you're extracting all the sugars from it. And they're doing it in a different size mash tun. I think it's an 8 or 8.5, man, I can't remember now. 8 ton instead of a 5.5. So and then it's not all just from that, but it's a different. You're going to get different extraction if you're changing up your mash tun. And then the wort, they usually use a semi-cloudy wort before they, that they're going to ferment. And this is now 50-50, the semi-cloudy, which is what they would use in their regular, and a 50% cloudy. Now, I've heard different things about what that does, but we're going to see if we can taste those 3 differences. I mean, there's 0 chance I'll be able to taste, oh, that's the Islay barley. I don't have that kind of depth experience, but those are the 3 things that are really, really different. Now, there also isn't an age stamp on here, but they're both Laphroaig. They're both only ex-bourbon. They're both natural. Actually, this is natural color. I found that on their website. This one didn't mention that, but they're both non-chill filtered. That this Elements also comes in a gorgeous box. I thought I'd show it to you. And before we get in here again, thanks, James. Can't believe you lent this to me to open. Wow, you're incredible. So let's get into Laphroaig Elements 1.0. That's all that experiment stuff that we've just been talking about. On the nose, what's this big Laphroaig like? Oh, it's right away, of course, smoky and ashy, but it is fruity, absolutely off the nose. It is sweet, but it's full of fruits. I've heard it described as strawberry or tropical. I'm not sure what I'm going to tag it in as yet, but I'm saying there is fruit in that smoke. It's smoked fruits. Yeah, and today it's leaning a little bit more strawberry, a little less tropical for me. That's just where I am right now. It's how the day has started, maybe. Oh, yeah, it is really nice. Boy, I haven't had a lot of smoked fruits to compare it to. Right away, I think of really dark chocolate around a strawberry. And I'm not getting a lot of chocolates on it yet, but that roasted cooked note, then with the sweet fruit. Oh, it is really nice. I shouldn't, well, let's stay on point and then see the contrast later. But it's rich, it's full. Some people will already say there's a meaty note in the nose, like a, barbecue, wings, baked ham, that kind of stuff. I'm not getting it on the nose just yet. It might come back once I've had a bit in my palate. So let's get to that palate. Wow, this is starting really, really thick, rich, sweet, smoke, ash. That medicinal note is on the back end. And now that I'm talking about it, it's on the front end. I will say, of all the big Isle of Peats, Laphroaig is probably, for me, one of the most medicinal Band-Aid that I get. And it's usually a welcome note in it, but it's definitely there. And now we're running in there. Salty, seaweedy, briny. And now that I'm in the salt and seaweed, I get a little bit of that sweet barbecue sauce. All right, let's try it on the palate. That's where I was headed. Hope you have something gorgeous in your glass. Sláinte. You know, it's dark, rich, and now we are down into that, you know, pithier, medicinal, roasted oaks. Barbecue now for sure, but this is burnt barbecue. Not yet in a bad way, but just, you know, that heavier charred, smoked, rich. That all came across the front. The nose fruits, there I got a little bit of burnt chocolate. Chocolate's not the right nose. Burnt coffee, that's better. Yeah, it's not rich. It's not milky enough to go into chocolate, but I will say roast coffees. Okay, I'm gonna try another sip. This one probably will give better flavors. This is a very savory dram for me. It has that sweet bracing of fruit. Sweeter, not light, like light, you know, kind of lemon cut apple that I sometimes get. This is thicker stewed cooked fruits. I know I said strawberry, but I'm cooking this into a fruit compote, you know, and glazing a roasted meat. And with that, it's not as meaty as many people say for me. Don't know why I'm not getting that. I've seen a lot of people say that, but I am getting thick and ashy and broody peat and smoke. This is really lovely. And I'm very curious because I'll tell you, I know it's hard to imagine, but I have not done a direct next side-by-side with the 10-year Cask Strength. I want to do it live with you in case it throws something at me, and those reactions can just be whatever they are. So I'm gonna put water on it as well, and then I'm gonna come back and talk about this. Laphroaig 10-year Cask Strength is an absolute must for any peated Scotch lover. Even when I was sharing my love of the Lagavulin 12-year, which I really, really love, that 2016. Many people have said, you know what, I like the Laphroaig 10-year Cask Strength better. So it's right up there in, you know, the upper echelons of fantastic Cask Strength peated Scotch. Now, what was interesting to me, this is 58.5, 58.6. I don't think I'm going to be able to tell the difference in 0.1. But this has an age stamp. It's 10. This might have some older, but because it's experimental in their process, it's probably young. I don't know how young, but I'm just saying experimental process takes a lot of time to shift up. Anyways, I've always known that these are non-chill filtered, or this is non-chill filtered. And I always thought it was colored. Like I was sure it was colored, but right on their website, it says natural color. So that's kind of nice that it's presented exactly how it should be. Natural Cask Strength, no color. Ex-bourbon only, just like this, but this is their 5.5 ton mash tuns and their semi-cloudy wort and mixes of barleys. I'm sure there's some Isla, but I'm sure there's some other stuff on there. Let's see what the Cask Strength is like on the nose. There's nothing light about Laphroaig, but in contrast, this is lighter on the nose. Absolutely, it's a little more light white peppers, just a little bit more citrus, a little bit more brighter orchard fruits, and less of that, you know, strawberry, which, you know, you'd be getting if you're getting a sherried cask, but there's no sherry in this. Yeah, there's another note. It's not potpourri because I don't like potpourri, but there's another floral note in this that is not present on the Cask Strength. But there's some nice spices in there. There's just some nice, I mentioned white pepper, but there's a little bit more some peppering and malt graham cracker. There's something like I'm trying to chase a little bit of a, it's not nutty, but a huskiness. It's a little bit more dusty huskiness on this. And this is darker, more brooding, richer fruits. I can see why they say tropical. I've heard roasted pineapple. Maybe a bit of that is in there, where I'm getting a little less of that here. Oh, but that is a good, not quite gingerbread, but maybe a little bit of gingerbread in there, like just a little bit. All right. Cask Strength 10-year-old. Classic on the palate. Sláinte. It's a little sharper. It is a little punchier, a little bit more pepper ash. And I've heard this described as peppery, but today, where I'm sitting right now, this is a mix of those white light peppers, a little bit more lemon, a little bit more, I'm getting a little bit more drying ash. I'm getting a little bit more older campfire smoldering down, that kind of a smokiness as it's kicking around my senses. In fact, like more peated. I'm sure they're very similar peating, but it's almost like the peat is up in my throat a bit more on that finish. Better try another sip, see where this is going to go. Sláinte? But that is so good. And some of the richness came through on the second part. Like, you know, sipping that many sips, even though I'm trying to take smaller sips of like 58% alcohol, you're going to get a lot of heat. You're going to get some burn. You're going to get some hug. And I'm trying to work at what are the edges of those tasted. So I actually put water on this before I cleared my palate. I'll put a bit of water on the 10-year-old as well, because they really should have about that. And I'll clear my palate and I'll come back to see if they shift a little bit with water on them. Right now, I'm really getting the fruity notes and a more roasted peat, if I could. All right, very quickly, the Elements 1.0 with some water on it. In direct comparison, interesting. This got a lighter sweetness to it. Like not a sugar, but it just went in a lighter sweet. And this is staying in that smoldery strawberry. All right, let's try on the palate. Cheers. Almost an icing sugar vanilla sweetness came out on that. That really tamed down some of the darker burnt notes. Just a quick comparison to this one. What a lovely gram. A little more citrus in there. A little more white pepper. You know, when you look at the tasting notes or the things you're supposed to get on here, spice, tropical, and smoke. Well, it has all of that. For me, the tropical today wasn't as tropical. I've heard burnt pineapple. I've heard all that stuff. For me, it absolutely was. Like, I haven't had roasted strawberries, but if I had roasted a strawberry around a campfire, that's what I'm getting in this. Absolutely. It's fruitier for me. It absolutely has more fruit than the sweeter, lemony, lighter fruits that I'm getting in here. Which one do I prefer? Well, I actually have to say today, I do actually prefer this. And that's got to be sacrilege, because just about everybody online has this as, you know, their top 5 scotches, and that's great. It's phenomenal. But today, this is just a little different in a way that maybe my palate is today. And maybe my palate is just right now. I've always shared with you guys, I don't emphasize it enough now, but tasting is still subjective. If I'm trying to, rate or judge a whiskey, I try to look at all the different layers and the structure and try to give you a sense of this is a quality whiskey. But it could be a quality whiskey that I don't like. This review has been a little bit more, which one am I enjoying? In terms of quality, actually, I don't think I could really tell the difference from them. They're both well built, nice oak backing, beautiful peat, sweet malt, good sugars. Like I honestly, I would struggle trying to rate them differently. So I've focused on what I'm enjoying, and then that's subjective. That is not what you might be enjoying. And that's really critical when you're watching us on YouTube here, to get a sense of, like, watch a couple of my videos and you're like, oh, John kind of likes that style. Absolutely. Anyways, I've hoped you've enjoyed this. I've certainly enjoyed having a couple of drams of this. James, you're a gentleman. A beautiful comparison. If you have both, why don't you tell me your thoughts? How did you think the Elements compared to this standard Laphroaig house style? Thank you for joining me here. Hope you guys are having a great weekend.